were brave, but we gave them the best equipment ever made. We gave them the anti-tank busters that knocked out tanks. I mean, you just aim them in the direction of the tank and the tank is gone. We gave them missiles, the latest and the greatest. They were able to shoot down a lot of things that would have normally wiped out. You know, probably would have been a very quick war. It would have been a war that lasted 3-4 days, but they had the benefit of unbelievable equipment. And Europe gave them too. We gave them far more because Biden shouldn't have done that. He should have equalized. We should have given him the same, or we should have given actually less than Europe. It affects Europe much more than us, but we're in there for over $300 billion. Europe's in there for over $100 billion, but still, Europe gave a lot. And I will say this, the Ukrainians, whether you think it's unfair that we gave all that money or not, they were very brave because somebody had to operate that stuff. And a lot of people I know wouldn't be operating it. They wouldn't have the courage to do it. So they fought very bravely. But we gave them the best equipment in the world. We make the best military equipment by far. There's nobody close. You look at other equipment from other countries, it's not even close. That's why everybody wants to buy our equipment. And that's why we're going to step up these contractors now that make it. And they're brilliant, but they make it too slowly. And we have to step them up, Pete, and let them make it at a much higher rate. Unfortunately, we have to do that. But if you look at our Patriots, if you look at our Tomahawks, if you look at our, well, what we do with tanks is, you wouldn't want to be driving a tank. You would feel nice and secure. But they are javelins, they're called. And I gave them the javelins. Remember they said Trump gave the javelins and Obama gave them sheets, right? They called Obama at that time. Barack Hussein Obama, if you haven't heard, did a terrible job. But that was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of bullshit thrown at us by Putin. For you want to know the truth, he's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to say anything? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to move ahead with that?
The Senate is passing and passed a very, very tough sanctions bill. Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Can you sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They passed it totally at my option, and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
Yesterday you said
Go ahead, please.
The Council of Economic Advisors released a new report saying that imported goods have actually decreased in price from December through March. Well, my question is, the Fed chairman, tariffs are going to cause price increases. Are the prices just not
chairman of the Fed?
Yes, exactly.
Well, you do a better job than him.
Are the prices just not passed through yet?
No, I think what's happening is everything's evening out. You know, when we charge, see, what people don't understand, the other countries have been charged, almost every country charges us tariffs. We had deficits with everybody for years, for decades. And we were like this big monolith that made bad deals with everybody. We rebuilt South Korea, we stayed there. It's okay, we rebuilt it, and we stayed there. And they pay us very little for the military. I got them to pay billions of dollars, and Biden then canceled it when he came in. I said to South Korea, as an example, we give you free military, essentially, very little. And I think you should pay us $10 billion a year. And they went crazy. But they agreed to 3. So I got 3 with a phone call. And I was satisfied. I said, but next year we have to talk. And then we had a rigged election and we never got to talk. And you know what Biden did? They probably went to him and they said, listen, Trump treated us terribly and we shouldn't be paying anything. And he cut it down to nothing. So that's what happens. It's ridiculous. That's the other thing. We're talking to countries about contributing to the military, not only just paying more in NATO, but contributing. We have 45,000 soldiers in South Korea, we have 45,000 soldiers in Germany.
Продолжается мониторинг соблюдения Стокгольмских соглашений. Поддерживается взаимодействие между странами по линии Координационного комитета ООН по передислокации. Главное, работа ООНовцев позволяет поддерживать минимальный уровень взаимодействия с противоборствующими сторонами, что имеет ключевое значение как минимум для обеспечения беспрепятственного гуманитарного доступа. В этой связи продление мандата миссии на данном результате необходимые меры, позволяющие надеяться на предотвращение неминуемой деградации обстановки.
Jerome Powell, and then I have a question for the Attorney General. Jerome Powell,
Thank
been
the
pressuring
representative of the
lower
Russian
interest
Federation
rates.
for his statement.
He's facing
and
accusations
now
of
give the
lying
floor
to
to the
Congress, which is a
representative of
potential
Greece.
crime about the
Thank you, Mr.
opulence.
President.
We should get
I
somebody
would also
in
like to
that's
thank
gonna lower
Special
the
Envoy
interest
Mr.
rates.
Grunberg,
Why don't you
Undersecretary
go over
General
his
Mr. Fletcher, and
resignation?
CAO from Yemeni Aid Mrs. Mer Nasser for the informative briefings today. I also welcome the participation of the Permanent Representative of Yemen in our meeting.
Too late, like two tall
Mr.
jumps for the
President,
Dallas
unfortunately in the
Cowboys.
past few days,
Too
we are
late.
witnessing an alarming resumption and
He's always
escalation
late.
of Houthis'
But he
aggressiveness
wasn't late
against
with Biden
commercial
before the
vessels
election. He was
transiting
cutting him
the
like
Red Sea
crazy. It
region.
didn't help too much, did it?
Just a couple
But
of
he was
days
cutting
ago,
him like
on the
crazy
6th and
before
7th
the
of
election
July,
with Kamala.
Houthis launched two
And Biden,
consecutive,
he was trying to
prolonged
get them
and
in, I
sophisticated
guess. I don't know.
attacks
He was recommended by
against the
somebody that
Liberian
worked for me.
flagged Greek-operated bulk carriers,
I like you
Magic
better.
Seas, and Eternity Sea, a few nautical miles away from the Hudea port. The attacks resulted in the sinking of both ships and the loss of 3 crew members thus far, while 16 persons are missing, according to available information at this time. We express our heartfelt condolences to the families of the victims, and we sincerely hope that all missing persons will be found soon. Greece is actively engaged in this endeavor for the first moment. The European naval operation Aspides immediately coordinated the mobilization of all available means in the region to offer assistance to the attacked crew members,
still talking
although no
about
prior
Jeffrey
request for
Epstein?
protection or
This
escort
guy's been
was
talked about
submitted
for
in both
years.
cases.
You're asking,
Mr. President,
we have
let us be
Texas,
clear.
we have this,
Both
we have all
attacks
of
were
the things.
launched in a well-planned and
And are
elaborated
people
manner
still talking about
with
this
great
guy, this
ferocity
creep?
and with the use of advanced
That is
weaponry, including
unbelievable.
drones,
You wanna waste the
RPG-type
time and
anti-tank
you
rockets
feel
and
like
anti-ship
answering?
missiles,
I don't mind
those
answering.
I
pointing
mean, I
to
can't believe you're asking a
well-trained and
question
fully
on
equipped
Epstein
forces.
at a time like this. where
Greece
we're
condemns in
having
the
some of the
strongest possible
greatest
terms these blatant
success
attacks
and also
calls for the
tragedy
immediate and
with what
unconditional
happened
cessation
in
of
Texas.
Houthis
It just
violence
seems,
against the lives of
like
seafarers
a
in international
desecration,
shipping.
but you go ahead.
We have a collective responsibility
First,
to
to
protect
back up on
seafarers
that, in
whose
February,
everyday
I did an
contribution to
interview on
international
Fox, and
maritime
it's been
trade is
getting a lot of
crucial.
attention
Any form of
because
threats to
I
their lives
said
and well-being
I was
is
asked
totally
a question
unacceptable and
about the
unjustified.
client list, and
Mr.
my
President,
response was,
this Council cannot
it's
disregard the
sitting
reality.
on my desk to
Houthis'
be
action pose a
reviewed,
constant and
meaning
substantial
the
threat to
file
regional peace and
along
stability,
with the
undermining the freedom of
JFK,
navigation and maritime
MLK files
security
as
in the
well.
Red Sea
That's
region,
what I meant by that.
a vital
Also,
international
to the
shipping
tens of
corridor
thousands of
whose
video,
disruption
they
affects
turned
us
out to
all.
be child porn
Houthis' indiscriminate
downloaded
and
by that
continuous acts of
disgusting
violence
Jeffrey
cannot be
Epstein.
justified
Child
under any
porn is
pretext.
what they were.
We
Never
must
going to be
immediately
released,
cease
never going to see the
all
light of
those acts
day.
of violence.
To him being an agent,
There
I
will
have
be
no
no
knowledge about that. We
long-lasting
can get back to
stability in
you
the
on
region
that.
unless the peace
And the minute
negotiation process in
missing
Yemen is
from
back
the
on track.
video, we
Greece
released the
underscored its
video
unwavering support
showing
to the Special
definitively
Envoy Hans Grunberg
the
in his
video
tireless
was not
effort to engage
conclusive,
all relevant
but
actors into an
the
inclusive, Yemeni-led
evidence
and
prior
Yemeni-owned
to it
political
was
process
showing
under
he
the UN
committed
auspices with
suicide.
full respect
And what was
of the
on that,
sovereignty,
there was a minute that was
territorial
off the
integrity and
counter.
unity of Yemen.
And what we learned from
The
Bureau
stability
of
of the Red
Prisons
Sea
was
region
every
is an
year,
integral
every
part of this process.
night, they
Regional
redo
activist
that video. It's old
contribution
from like
towards this
1999.
direction remains
So every
crucial.
night the video is
We further call
reset,
on all member states
and
to
every
respect
night
and
should have
faithfully
the same
implement
minute
the
missing.
targeted
So we're
arms
looking for
embargo
that video
and
to
prevent
release
any
that
illicit
as well,
transfers of
showing
advanced
the minute is
weaponry
missing
and
every
training to the
night.
Houthis,
And that's it on
consistent with
Epstein.
Council Resolution 2316 of 2025 and 2624 of 2022. As it is evident, EUNAVFOR Aspides, through its purely defensive posture, contributes substantially in safeguarding maritime security and the protection of international shipping industry and seafarers. Mr. President, in closing, we reiterate our steadfast commitment to the protection of navigational rights and freedom in the Red Sea region and remain ready to further engage with fellow member states on this important matter. In this respect, as the U.S. representative pointed out, we call on our fellow Security Council members to work towards the renewal of United Nations Security Council
But if they
Resolution
want to
2768.
buy
Thank you.
and make a lot of money and sell.
I thank the
in the
representative
United
of Greece
States,
for his statement
you know, if you
and
go
would
back
now
and look
give the
at,
floor to the
some of
representative
the
of Republic of Korea.
Good presidents. Our country was
Thank
the
you,
wealthiest,
Mr. President.
proportionately the wealthiest, from 1870
I would like to begin by
1913.
expressing our
It was an
appreciation to
all-tariff
Special
country.
Envoy Hans
We didn't have
Grunberg,
income tax. That came,
ESG Tom
that came in
Fletcher for their
1913 with
comprehensive
tariffs.
briefing. And I
And we had so much
do
money we didn't know what to do.
express
with it.
my
We
appreciation
had,
to Ms.
we
Summer
had a
Nasser
couple of presidents that were
for
very,
her
very strong.
briefings vividly
McKinley, I guess, more
describing
than
the
anybody,
situation on
but
the
he was the
ground
tariff king, but he
and
was very, very
valuable
strong. And it's
recommendations.
sort of sad. He He
We
made a
meet today
fortune for
amid
this country.
troubling
Became
signs.
very
The
rich.
tensions
And
in and around Yemen have become
Teddy
more
Roosevelt
inflamed.
went out and vice president,
It is
and he
particularly
spent the money.
worrying
And they
that
said
the
Roosevelt
Houthis
was a great
have launched
president. And
the
let's say he
first
was a great
attack
president, but the money was
against
paid
Israel
by McKinley
since
with tariffs.
the fragile
Tariffs,
Iran's Israel
are charged by
ceasefire
other
was
countries
enacted.
at levels that are
We have
ridiculous.
also witnessed
And
the
you know, I call
resumption of
those other countries to
Houthis'
say,
attack
and every one of them is willing
commercial
to give us
vessels
everything now, by the way,
in the Red
just so
Sea.
you know. Sir, we'll
Against
charge
this
you
background,
no
I'd like to
tariffs,
highlight the following
nothing. We'll give you
points.
everything. We'll
First,
give you access to our markets.
the Republic
We'll
of
give
Korea
you everything.
condemns
Is that a correct statement?
the recent
Scott?
hostile
Howard, would you say that's a correct
acts
statement?
carried out by
It's
the
like,
Houthis in the Red Sea.
They just don't.
And in the
Because they're
wider
very spoiled,
region,
because for
and
years
once
they
again
ripped us
strongly
off and
urges
we didn't have a president
the
that
Houthis to
understood it,
cease
or
all dangerous
Secretary of Treasury
provocations.
or Secretary of
Houthi
a lot of
recently
different
asserted
secretaries are involved. But
that their
certainly Commerce
operations will
Secretary
persist
was,
until
not doing their job.
the
I don't know
aggression
about
against
Kelly's
Gaza
small
stops.
business. We'll
And
keep
the
it that
seas
way.
is
Okay?
lifted.
Her small business is bigger
Such
than
words
almost all
and
big
actions
businesses.
that is only undermine
But
ongoing
no,
efforts
they are
toward a
very
ceasefire.
respectful of our country. But the
The
incentive is
Houthis
that they have the
acted
right to do
upon
business
their
with us.
conviction
Without that, they don't
by
have the
resuming
right to do
attacks
business.
against
And that
Israel.
would be okay too.
Florida deal.
Furthermore,
In the next 24 hours,
the
we'll
recent
hear of Florida
strikes
deals.
on two Greek-owned bulk carriers,
But the deals are mostly
which
my
led
deal
to
to
the
them.
death of four
We're
crews
picking
in
a
the Red
number
Sea
that's
for
low.
the first time in a year,
We don't want to hurt them. And
underscore
fair.
the persistent,
We're picking a number that's
acute threat
lower
they
than, in
pose
most
to
cases, lower
maritime
than what they
security
charged us.
and the stability of
But it's
the region.
amazing when you've paid all this money for
The
years.
Security
and
Council must
they
maintain
get
its
one
united
president
voice to
that's a
condemn
little bit different
the
and a
Houthi
little
attacks
tougher
on the
on
merchant
this subject.
and the commercial
And they're willing
vessels
to drop
in the Red Sea.
everything they've been charging us for
In this
years
regard,
and
we
years.
believe
I mean, we have
monitoring
countries going, we
and
will have
reporting
no,
on
you
Houthi
don't have to pay
aggression
any
is
tariff to
essential
come in and do business.
to ensure that the Council
They're giving us
remains
total access to
fully
their countries. They gave us no
informed.
access to the country.
Second,
They say, well, you cannot
we urge
go into our
all
country.
parties to
now
ensure
it's,
full,
we
safe,
will give you total
and
access and you
unhindered
don't have to pay
humanitarian
any tariffs.
access,
But please don't
especially
charge
for
us tariffs.
vulnerable
And we don't like
groups,
that deal.
including women
So the letters I
and
send
children.
out are, we have made
The
some
June
deals. We
CAC
can make a
report
lot more deals.
identifies
It's just
denial
too
of humanitarian access
time-consuming.
as a leading
It just makes
cause
it more
of
complicated.
child death.
And we
in
can do
Yemen.
things over the years,
As
too.
OCHA
You know, we're
has
not
emphasized,
hard line.
Restrictions on
But
food aid
it's about time the
are
United
taking the
States of
heaviest
America
toll
started collecting
women
money from
and children.
countries that were ripping
Furthermore,
us off,
recent
ripping
attacks
us off and
on critical
laughing
infrastructure
behind our
only
back at how stupid
exacerbate
we were.
civilian suffering.
Okay? Thank
We
you.
reiterate the urgent need to uphold international humanitarian law and call for the protection of civilians and civilian infrastructure under all circumstances. Third, we call on all your member states to faithfully implement all relevant Security Council resolutions,
Because BRICS was set up to
including the
hurt
arms
us.
embargo.
BRICS was set up to
The situation in
degenerate
and
our
around
dollar
Yemen is a
and take our
stark
dollar as the
reminder
standard, take it off
that when
as the
Security
standard.
Council resolution
And that's
are
okay
not
if they want to
fully
play that game,
implemented
but I can
as
play that game
designed,
too. So anybody that's in
peace and
BRICS is
stability in the
getting a
region
10%
are
charge.
severely compromised.
Yeah, pretty soon.
The Republic of Korea also
If
underscores
they're a member of
once
BRICS, they're
again
going to have to pay 10%
the
tariff.
importance of the
Just for
UN
that one
verification
thing.
and
And they won't be a member
inspection
alone.
mechanism
I thought
funding,
BRICS was, you know, I said
which
this
plays a
about
vital
a year
role
ago,
in both
and it largely
enforcing
broke
the
up.
arms embargo
But,
and
you know, there are a
alleviating
couple that
Yemen's
hang
long-standing
around, but I thought
humanitarian
it largely
suffering.
broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion,
Fourth,
not a serious
we
threat.
hope
What they're trying to do is destroy the
that the
dollar
glimmers of hope
so that
that have
another country can
witnessed
take over
on the
and be
ground
the
will
standard.
lead
And we're not going to
more
lose the
breakthrough.
standard at any time.
As
If
the
you have a
USG
smart
Fletcher just
president, you will
briefed,
never lose the
the recent
standard. If you have a
reopening
stupid
of a
president like
vital
the last
access
one,
road
you would lose the
between
standard.
Sanas
You
and
wouldn't,
Aden
you wouldn't have the
was
dollar.
one positive
And if
example
we
of
lost
cooperation
the,
and showed
the world
that
standard
where there is a
dollar,
will,
that would be like losing
there's
a
a way.
war, a major world war.
In another,
We would not be the
positive
same country
development, the
any
water
longer. We're not going to let that
authorities
happen.
of ties
The dollar, you ever hear
agreed
the expression,
to
dollar is
operate
king. The
across the
dollar is
front
king.
lines,
We're going to keep it that way.
alleviating
okay?
suffering of hundreds of thousands.
And I'm just saying, if people want to challenge it,
We hope
they can,
that all
but
parties
they're going to have to pay a big price.
especially
And
the
I don't
Houthis,
think any of them are willing
will
to pay
build
that
on
price.
these encouraging developments to create tangible benefits for their people and restore trust.
Well, the European Union
Lastly,
has been speaking
Mr.
to
President,
us,
we
Ursula,
note with
and the whole
appreciation,
group,
especially
and
in
they've been very
Bloomberg's
nice. They treated us very
ongoing
badly
efforts
until recently. Now they're
toward
treating
a
us very nicely.
Yemeni-led,
It's like a different world, actually.
Yemeni-owned political
They've treated
transition.
us very badly. They were among the
Particularly his
toughest
recent engagement
to deal
with
with.
women,
Actually, in many
group
respects,
and
they were
civil
much
society in Aden,
worse than China.
to
Look
hear
at what
their
they do to our
voices
companies. They sue
and their
Apple.
hopes
They
for
sue
peace.
Google.
The
17
Republic of Korea
billion
reaffirms
they got from
its
Apple
firm
on a
support
lawsuit that they
for
didn't
an
have a case.
inclusive political process
They have,
and the
judges
realization
that
of
are
peace and
European
stability
Union
for all
judges.
Yemenis.
And they ruled, they
Thank
take
you,
so
Mr.
much
President.
money away from our country
Thanking
in terms
the
of that, in terms of other
representative
things
of
that
the
they do.
Republic
They're
of
very
Korea
tough.
for his statement.
But now they're being
and
very
now
nice
give the floor to
us,
the representative
and,
of Slovenia.
We'll see what happens. We're probably
Thank you very much,
2 days off
Mr.
from
President.
sending them a
And
letter.
thanks also to the
We are
Special
talking to
Envoy
them.
Bloomberg
I
and
just want you to know, a
Undersecretary
letter
General
means
Fletcher
a
for their
deal.
briefings and
A lot of
their
people said,
relentless
we got
efforts.
200 countries.
We
We
also
can't meet with
thank
200
Ms.
countries.
Nasser
We have a
for
few
sharing
trusted people that know what they're doing.
first-hand
They're doing a good job, but
testimony
you have to
and
do it in a more
perspectives
general way, but it's a very
from
good way.
Yemenis,
It's a better way.
Yemeni
It's a
civil
more powerful
society.
way.
And we thank
we
all
sent them a
for
letter. You read the
their
letter. I think it was well
recommendations and
crafted.
messages to the Council.
And
of course, we welcome
mostly
permanent
it's just
representative of
a little
Yemen.
number in there. You'll pay
in the
25%, 35%.
President,
We have
since
some at
our last
60, 70.
discussion on Yemen
Those are
at
ones
the
with
Council,
massive, where we have massive trade
the region
deficits because
has seen further escalation, for
But I would
which
say in
is still
every
reason.
case, I'm
Regrettably,
treating them
hostilities
better than
between
they
the
treated
Houthis
us
and
over the
Israel
years. Don't you agree
continue.
with that?
And this week saw the resumption of attacks by the Houthis against commercial vessels in the Red Sea.
Relationships,
We condemn the attacks against the vessel Magic Seas and Eternity Sea, which have tragically resulted in the loss of civilian lives. These attacks threaten security and have potentially direct humanitarian, environmental and commercial consequences. In response, EU Operation Aspidas continues to play its part to safeguard maritime security and freedom of navigation. We also condemn continued Houthis targeting of Israel, as well as strikes by Israel against critical civilian infrastructure in Yemen. International humanitarian law must be respected by all and at all times. We echo the Secretary General in calling for de-escalation, diplomacy and dialogue. There is a clear need for maximum restraint by all parties in a region already marked by turmoil. Meanwhile, President, for a decade, the Yemeni people have been trapped in a vicious cycle of food insecurity. The deepening humanitarian crisis continues to cause immense suffering across the country. Ms. Nasser's compelling briefing today has left us in no doubt about the scale and urgency of the situation. The recently published IPC figures for Yemen, as outlined by Undersecretary General Fletcher, paint a stark picture of whole communities on the brink of famine, or what is classified as catastrophic levels of food insecurity. As early as September, it is clear that collective action is needed to prevent yet another human tragedy from becoming a legacy of our generation. We repeat our call for the release of all UN and humanitarian personnel detained by the Houthis, which is not only inhumane, but compounds the already dire situation. Likewise, we call for the release of all detained journalists and members of civil society. President, last month we spoke of the remarkable resilience of the Yemeni people and the power of local leadership, welcoming the agreement reached to open a key road connecting Aden and Sana'a, which is already delivering dividends. Today, Slovenia welcomes report by Undersecretary General Fletcher on the engagement of the United Nations to manage the water supply and restore water access on both sides of the front line. We know that one of the most pressing and sometimes overlooked consequences of war is disruption to water and sanitation services. Slovenia hopes that this agreement can help to restore Yemeni livelihoods and address a host of other interconnected issues, from malnutrition to spread of disease. It is clear that progress is possible. What is required is courage and commitment by all parties, a commitment to peace and to the needs and aspirations of the Yemeni people above all.
it's
We
hobbling
repeat
along
our
because people
long-standing and urgent
they're finally
call
getting it.
for
But,
reinvigorated
they
discussions
spend
on a
trillions of dollars on
nationwide
the Green New Scam, getting
ceasefire
nothing for
and
it.
progress towards an
Devised by a
inclusive
couple of young people
UN-led
that
peace
weren't even
process.
good college
We cannot agree
students,
more
you
with
know?
Special Envoy's
Not even good
statement that
students. Check out
military
their
option
logs.
is
Yeah.
an illusion. Further escalation, further violence
Not for CNN.
serves
Not for CNN. Go ahead.
The last jobs, in the last jobs
Thank the
report,
representative of
Mr. President, in the last
Slovenia
jobs
for his
report,
statement and would
manufacturing
now
jobs
like to
actually
give the
lost
floor to the
7,000 jobs.
representative of France.
When will the
Merci, Monsieur le
investments
Président.
that
Monsieur le
you've been
Président, je
talking
remercie
about
tout d'abord
have
l'envoyé
been
spécial du secrétaire général, Monsieur Oswald
About seven
et
have
le secrétaire
started,
général adjoint aux
100
affaires
started
humanitaires,
within a
Monsieur
short period of time.
ainsi que Madame
Lee
la
Zeldin, who
directrice
may be the most important man in this room, I'm sorry, but he's the one that gets the permits, whereas he's the one that has to get the permits for the plants and the factories and permits that used to take
Monsieur le
5 years.
Président, la
He's
France
getting in
condamne avec la plus
record-setting
grande
time.
fermeté la reprise des
AI,
attaques
we're leading China a lot in AI, and
dans lesquelles
if we go with this, you know, I'm allowing the plants to build their own electric. I'm allowing them to become an electric utility, so they can produce their own electricity, because we need double the electricity to be successful with AI, which is the biggest thing now. We need double the electricity that we have, which is hard to believe. We need even more than that. And they're building plants with their own electricity substations. They don't have to use the grid. And anything they build extra, they're putting into the grid. So we're supplying the grid with brand new electric sources. And you know, it's funny, when they came to see me, they never even asked for that. I told them about it. The reason they didn't, they thought that was an impossibility. You're not allowed to build your own electricity. These are massive investments that are being made in building electricity for their plants. And they're going to have, I think, a lot of electricity left over. And that electricity is going to be passed into the grid and give us no more, you know, like you look at California, they have blackouts and brownouts every week. They're totally out of control. They have a really incompetent governor. Where's Chris's? You want to speak to this subject?
Yeah, I think a huge thing in the One Big Beautiful
que
Bill
ce Conseil appelle
is
toutes les parties à assurer la
the
protection des
ending of these subsidies that you call the Green New Scam. That saves our country $500 billion over the next 10 years. But American taxpayers were paying twice.
exiger la
They were paying
libération
that money,
sans
$500
condition
billion
des
in
personnels
subsidies,
humanitaires
and they were paying
détenus
more
par
expensive
traitement
electricity
et
prices.
illégal.
If you subsidize
Ces appels
something,
doivent
you should at
être
least
conduits à
lower
des
the cost
efforts
of it.
permettant un accès
But in this
humanitaire
case, we
immédiat
were subsidizing something
à ceux qui en ont
and paying
besoin,
more for
y
it.
compris en
So the
rétablissant les
One Big
quotas
Beautiful Bill had
d'approvisionnement.
two huge
Et en
things: ending wasteful spending. Wind, solar, and
Monsieur le
batteries
Président,
combined
chacun
are
garde à
3%
l'esprit les
of
deux
US total
dimensions
primary energy.
d'une situation qui n'a que trop duré
$1 trillion,
et dont les
another
effets
$500 billion
humanitaires comme
coming.
sur la
This is
stabilité
not a good
régionale
investment,
sont
hurting our
dénoncées.
businesses, hurting our
L'une
consumers.
est interne
And
et
the
elle
One Big
risque
Beautiful Bill
d'aboutir à
also
la remise en cause
unshackled
de
oil,
l'unité du
gas, and coal
C'est la prise du
development in
pouvoir
the
par les
States,
outils Astana
onshore and
et la façon
offshore.
dont depuis des
Secretary
années
Bergen has been
leur volonté
working
de pouvoir fait
tirelessly
obstacle
on how
à
by
tous les efforts de
getting the government out of the way,
réconciliation
private businesses will
alimentant
build
de
more
surcroît
resources in
les
the United
ambitions de
States,
groupes à travers le
lowering costs for
pays, à
American
commencer
consumers
par
and
Daesh
making
et
much
Al-Qaïda.
better
L'autre est
leverage for the United
international,
States to help our allies
avec la
abroad
façon
and
dont,
reduce the
appuyés par
power of our
l'Iran,
adversaries.
les Houthis ont
So just
décidé
a
de se
huge
jeter
win
dans
in
la
the
bataille
front all
régionale
around. Thank you.
contre leurs voisins,
We're setting
contre les
records
pays dont les
now.
navires croisent en mer
There'll be nothing
contre les
compared
travailleurs
to what they'll be in about a year from now.
Le
We're
Conseil
setting
doit
records, and
pour
wind is a
apporter
very expensive
à
form
tous
of
ceux qui sont
energy.
engagés
It's
dans
very
des
bad
efforts
for your beautiful
à commencer par
surroundings, the plains and the valleys.
tous ceux qui sont engagés dans la
Birds
fuite,
dying all over the place. The whole thing is a
les
disaster.
circonstances.
They're almost
L'annonce par le
exclusively made
président
in China.
d'un cessez-le-feu
Not that I have
en
anything
Iran de la
against China,
France
because I don't have a great
doit
relationship
permettre
with President Xi,
un nouveau
but
chapitre au Yémen et
I
dans
asked him, how many
Il
wind
faut
farms do
rétablir
you
la
have?
confiance entre
He
les
makes them, but they don't have a lot of
Les
wind
Houthis
farms.
doivent
I'll tell you,
retourner
very,
à la
very
table
few.
des négociations.
And
Les puissances
wind
régionales
is
doivent faciliter le
tremendously
processus
expensive
qui se
and
tiendra sous
very
l'égide
ugly.
de
And if
l'envoyé
you own a house
spécial
that's
et au
inside of a
Canada.
windmill, your house is worth less than half.
Et l'embargo sur les
And you hear
armes
noises.
est
And, interestingly,
Seule
in
une solution
New England, you
politique
probably
permettra
read
de
where
mettre fin au conflit.
for 50 years they
Elle
had
devra
two
être
wells
maintenue
washed up.
et permettre la pleine
50 years.
participation
And last summer,
et des jeunes
they had
et
14
à la
washed up. Now,
La
I'm
France
not saying
réaffirme
it's the
enfin son
wind farm
attachement
that was
à
built,
l'unité
maybe it is,
et à la
right?
stabilité
Probably is.
ainsi qu'à la sécurité.
It's tremendously expensive.
I thank the
And it can only
representative
be
of
done
France
with
for his
subsidy. You know, I
statement
know a man
and
that's in
would
that
now like to
business,
give the
and
floor to
one of
the
the biggest in the
representative
world actually
of
runs a
Denmark.
company that builds these stupid
Thank you,
windmills.
Mr. President.
And like
he said, "I
others,
hate the
let me
business
also
because it's the
thank
only
Special
energy
Envoy
where you
Grunberg
need
and
subsidy."
USG Fletcher
He said,
for
"Energy
their
shouldn't
substantial
need subsidy, you
briefings,
should make money
as
with
well
energy."
as Mrs.
So when
Nasser
the
for
other
her
one is the
analysis
solar, those big solar
and
fields,
concrete
they're taking our
recommendations.
farmland, our
Mr.
farmers
President,
are, like,
after several
mortified by
months
it.
of calm,
They hate it.
the situation
It's
is now
very, very
again
inefficient
escalating.
and very
We
ugly,
strongly
too.
deplore the
They're
resumption of
probably better
Houthi
than a
attacks
windmill,
against
but you go
commercial
around and
shipping
you
in
see
the
all
Red
these
Sea this
things
week,
that are 3 miles
leading to
long
the
by 3
sinking of the
miles
vessel
wide,
Magic
and you say,
Seas.
"What the hell is that?"
We further denounce the
And it's
attacks
a lot of
on the
plastic
vessel
from
Eternity
China.
Sea that caused the
It's
deaths of
plastic,
several
black
crew members.
plastic from China.
Denmark also
No,
strongly
we don't-
condemns
we
the
wanna be
Houthis'
smart. We're
continued
going with,
attacks on Israel.
Yeah,
The
look,
destabilizing actions of the
China right
Houthis in
now is
Yemen,
building
the Red Sea,
58
and across the wider region
coal-fired,
remains a threat to
58
maritime
big ones.
security and
They
risk
have
dragging
62
Yemen
on
further
the
into
books to
regional
build.
conflict. They must
We
cease
are-
immediately,
we've
and freedom of
reintroduced
navigation
clean,
must be
beautiful
respected
coal.
in line with
You know,
international
you can do a
law.
lot with coal now.
We
Clean,
need to see
beautiful coal.
renewed momentum
And
in the
natural
peace
gas
efforts,
and all of the other
critical
things
to
that we
improving
have. But we don't
economic
want
and
wind,
humanitarian
and we don't want
conditions
solar
in the country.
because they're a blight
Unfortunately,
on our country.
the Houthis'
They hurt our
unacceptable
country very
involvement
badly,
in broader
and smart
regional
countries don't
tensions
use it.
has continued to stall
Solar
progress
sounds good,
towards
I
a
will
roadmap
say,
for
and
peace
I like
in Yemen.
on occasion you'll see a
We are
roof
also concerned
which is
about
made
the
of solar
reported growing
brick.
links between the
But it's
Houthis
a
and
smaller
non-state
use.
actors such as Al-Qaeda.
We need
We
the kind
stress
of
the
thing
value
that's
of
gonna
crucial
fire up our
confidence-building
plants.
measures
And
needed
it's
to
not gonna
pave the
be
way
wind,
for the resumption
you know,
of an
it's very
inclusive political
intermittent, as you
process
probably know.
in line with the
But we-
special envoy's
they have-
efforts, who
they've
we
spent a
continue
fortune.
to
They've
fully
spent
support.
trillions of dollars
As
on
we've
this
heard
stuff.
today, the recent
And,
opening of the
and
road
I'll just
between
give you one
Aden
other story.
and
A friend of
Sana'a
mine is
is a welcome
very
example of such
successful guy. He
measures,
went back
which
to
we
see
hope
his
is only one of
mother
many,
in Minnesota.
demonstrate
Hadn't seen her in
that
a
with
long
political
time.
will,
And he
progress
wasn't back
is
for 10
possible.
years, which isn't a nice
Denmark
story.
will
I mean,
continue
you
to
don't see
support
your mother
all
for 10
efforts
years.
to this
He's got
end,
some difficulties,
to
which I know the
de-escalate
guy, he
tensions
does have some
and improve the
difficulties.
security and
He's
humanitarian
very
situation
successful,
for
but
ordinary Yemenis
probably not
who
the
have
nicest
suffered
person.
too much
It was
for
actually
too
longer
long.
than 10 years, but he went
Mr.
back and he
President,
told me he wanted to go
as
and look
we've
at the
heard,
valley.
the
There's a
humanitarian
valley in
situation in
Minnesota
Yemen
that he thought was so
continues to
beautiful.
deteriorate.
Hadn't seen it in a
60% of the
long time.
population
He's driving along the
requires
road,
humanitarian and
I'll use
protection
the word
assistance,
gosh. Oh my gosh.
a staggering increase of 1.5 million compared to just
He said
last
it looked
year.
like a junkyard.
Amidst
He had
this dire situation,
159
Yemen continues to endure
windmills that were all
crisis
over the
upon
place.
crisis,
Some were old,
marked by
some were newer,
its status as one of
different
the most
companies, different
climate
shapes,
vulnerable
different
countries
sizes,
globally.
different
For the
colors.
past
Many
months,
of them were terminated.
devastating flooding has
Terminated
eroded
meaning
livelihoods,
clouds.
displaced
You can't take them down because the
thousands,
environmentalists
destroyed
don't let you
vital
bury the
infrastructure,
blades
and contributed
because
to a
they're made out of a
renewed
fiber they say is
countrywide
bad for the
cholera
earth.
outbreak.
So they want you to put them up, but they don't
This
let you take
emergency
them down.
unfolds at a time
But many
when
of them were
hundreds of
turned
health
off.
facilities
He said it
have
looked
been
like
forced
a
to close
junkyard. Go to
due
Palm
to
Springs,
funding constraints.
California, and
These
take a look at
humanitarian
that pile of
needs
junk
are
there.
further
You go into
compounded
a
by
wealthy
shortages
neighborhood,
of
before
medical
you get there, you have
supplies,
to ride through
as well as frequent
hundreds of
electricity
windmills that
cuts,
are-
all of
most
which
them are
undermine
turned off, they're
life-saving
rotting,
efforts
they're rusting,
on the
they're
ground.
30 years old,
As
20
food
years old.
insecurity is soaring,
And, they have a
malnutrition
very short
levels
life. You know,
rise,
those
and
windmills have a very
epidemics
short life,
spread.
especially
We
the
must
ones that
find
are
new
in the
ways
nice
to meet the
salty
growing needs
Atlantic
of the
Ocean
population in
and
all of
Pacific
Yemen.
Ocean, where the salt just gets
Mr.
under
President,
that steel
while
and
humanitarian aid
decimates
can
it.
save lives,
Now, it's a
it is rendered
horrible,
powerless
horrible
if it
thing for
cannot
our
reach
country.
those in need.
And I
Humanitarian
speak out. It would be nice to
organizations,
say
including
wind,
the UN,
'cause it sounds so
must
good,
be
doesn't
able
it?
to
Like,
operate in
wind,
security wherever
wind.
the people require
It's
aid.
not-
This
it's
is a
these
major
ugly
issue in Yemen,
machines.
where the operating
And they're
environment
all
for
made, you
humanitarian
gotta see.
workers
Some
remains
are a little
extremely
taller, a little shorter.
challenging.
They're made by
We
different
call on the
companies. They have
Houthis
different
to ensure
stock.
safe,
They have
rapid,
different blades,
and
they have
unimpeded
different
humanitarian
everything.
access
It is
to ensure
so
assistance can reach
horrible.
all civilians in need.
And if you look at smart
We
countries,
reiterate
they
our
don't
demands
use
for
it.
the immediate
Smart
and
countries don't
unconditional
use it.
release of all
And we're
those
now a smart
detained
country.
by the
We're not
Houthis.
We're a
I
brilliant
thank you.
country. We're not smart, we're brilliant.
Thank the
now.
representative
We're
of
gonna be a brilliant
Denmark
country.
for
We
her
have to be,
statement. I
because
shall
we have to
now
catch
make
up
a statement
with
in
some
my
really
capacity as
stupid
the
people that did a
representative
bad
of
job. Yes,
Pakistan.
Brian?
Yes, Mr. President, I've got a
We
quick
thank thank Special Envoy Grunberg and USG Fletcher for their comprehensive briefings. We also express our appreciation to Ms. Nasser for her remarks on the dire humanitarian situation in Yemen. Pakistan remains deeply concerned over the protracted crisis in Yemen. Years of conflict have inflicted immense suffering on the Yemeni people.
Palestinian senator.
Political fragmentation,
His name is
economic
Schumer.
collapse,
He's
and
a Palestinian.
environmental
No, he's a
degradation
Palestinian. He's
have
become a
further
Palestinian. He's
exacerbated
abandoned the
plight.
Jews. But I saw him
Began
say,
as an internal crisis has since
Trump's
assumed
fault.
broader regional
yeah, that's right.
dimensions
It's
with
Trump's
serious
fault.
implications
He was actually,
for
do you ever
international
see
peace and
John
security.
Lovett's The Liar? Where
As
he
the
goes,
special
yeah,
envoy
yeah,
said,
I went
the
to
situation
Harvard,
is
that's right.
fragile,
This was Schumer.
volatile,
He
and
goes,
unpredictable.
Yeah, Yeah,
And we agree with
it's
his key
Trump's
point
fault. That's
that
right.
there
It's
is no
Trump.
military
I
solution
actually saw that
to this
stupid guy
conflict,
try and blame
that
it on me.
negotiations
And I said,
provide
"Man,
the
that's-
best way
That's a
forward."
tough one to take.
The
But his
situation
career is
requires
limited
urgent,
because I hear AOC is
collective,
gonna
and
be in there.
constructive
And
action.
she's no bargain
The
either,
risk
by
of
the way. Go
renewed
ahead.
hostilities could jeopardize the ongoing fragile peace efforts and further aggravate the civilian suffering.
My two
It
questions.
is
Looks like we have a
imperative
rogue
to
judge, and
reinvigorate
Obama
inclusive
allowed to
political
happen in
negotiations
Afghanistan. And what that did to our
implement
image,
coordinated
President Trump
measures
said,
to address the
with
interconnected
Operation
political,
Netanyahu, reestablishing
humanitarian,
American
and
leadership in
socio-economic
deterrence and
challenges facing
And our
Yemen.
so-called enemies were
In this
watching.
regard,
They
I
watched
would like
every
to
minute of
highlight
it.
4
They
points.
watched. There was very
First,
few people that weren't
we call
watching,
on all
actually.
parties to build
But they
upon the
watched
December
everybody. It was a
2023 roadmap, which
military
provides a
performance,
credible basis
the
for a
likes of which we haven't
sustainable
seen in a long time.
political solution.
I mean, if you compare that to
The
the same
continued
country,
engagement of
the
regional
hostages
actors,
from
particularly
years
the
ago,
Kingdom of
Jimmy
Saudi
Carter was
Arabia and the
unfortunate for Jimmy
Sultanate
Carter. He was
of
a nice
Oman,
man, but
is commendable.
with the helicopters
It
going
has
down,
been
the
instrumental
sandstorms,
in
the
keeping the hope
prisoners,
for the
that got
peace
captured,
process alive.
and the election, and the prisoners,
As
and
Mr.
Reagan, and all the
Grunberg
problems.
also noted,
It was
time
nothing but
was not
problems.
on our
And,
side. A
and
prolonged
ours a
political
failure, and ours
stalemate
was
can
not
affect
only
the
the
gains
pilots, I
made.
mean, those machines flew
All
for 37
stakeholders must
straight hours. They didn't
intensify
stop.
efforts to break the
They
political
went
impasse
skedaddle. You know the word
and
skedaddle? It
move
means
decisively
skedaddle.
toward a
They dropped
Yemeni-owned
the
and
bombs, and
Yemeni-led
somebody
political
said,
process
"Skedaddle.
under the auspices
Let's get the hell out
of
of
the
here."
United Nations.
And every
We
bomb
also
hit its
appreciate
mark,
and support the efforts of the
and
Special
hit
Envoy,
hit it
including
incredibly.
his
And as you know, the
recent
Atomic
engagements,
Energy Commission
the
said it's
meeting with
gone.
the Yemeni Prime
That place
Minister,
is gone.
and
We had a lot of
interactions
fake
with members
reporting,
of the civil
mostly from
society
CNN,
and women leaders
where
of political
the scammer
parties.
a writer
Second,
for
the
CNN, who
volatile
should be
regional
fired, by the way.
environment
She was
risked
involved with
further
51
destabilizing
fake
Yemen and the
intelligence
broader
agents, if you
Middle East.
remember that.
We are
She
deeply
did that story,
concerned
created a story
on
out
the
of it. She
recent
created a story
escalation
out of
and
the
attacks,
laptop from
including
hell,
on ships
saying it came from
and
Russia, but it
civilian
actually came from Hunter
infrastructure.
Biden's
Pakistan
bedroom or
underscores
worse.
the urgent need for de-escalation,
And
dialogue,
just a
and
scammer.
diplomacy
She's
to
still at
preserve
CNN,
regional
which is
peace and
pretty amazing.
stability.
But
It goes without
we'll ask you
saying
a question about
that
her.
durable
But
peace
they
in the
came up
Middle
with this
East
concept that maybe the
requires
attack
an
wasn't
immediate
that
ceasefire in Gaza
good. Maybe,
and
and I
urgent,
saw it happen
credible
right
steps
after the attack. I saw
to
this
realize
person on CNN.
Palestinian
I actually watch. I
statehood
like to watch the
in
enemy.
accordance with
You learn from the
international
enemy. And I
legitimacy.
watch because you have to know
Third,
where they're
the
coming
humanitarian
from.
situation
And I
in
watch you
Yemen
say,
remains dire.
Anderson, you
Over
know,
18 million Yemenis,
I'm hearing
including
stories
women
that
and children,
maybe they didn't hit their
require
target.
urgent
Maybe it wasn't
life-saving
that good a hit.
assistance.
And,
The
you
risk
know,
of
hearing
famine
stories. The next day it was
continues
a
to
little
haunt,
more, and the next day a little more.
with millions
After 3-4
facing
days,
acute food
she was saying,
insecurity.
You know, I don't
We
know.
urge
I
the
don't think it was
international
that-
community
Except
to
by
respond
that time everybody
generously
knew it was
to
hit
OCHA's
perfectly.
humanitarian appeal,
The evidence is in the
reiterated
planes. The evidence
also
was
today
the pilots
by
are the
Mr.
best
Fletcher,
evidence. But
and
they actually
also
came out of
noted
their
by
plane because they
Ms.
were here the
Nasser,
other day and they said,
to
"It's so
ensure
sad. We
predictable
did such a good
and
job. We
sustained
flew into very
funding and
dangerous
support the
airspace. I'll never
scaling up
forget, we were in the
of humanitarian
situation room,
operations.
and they
Fourth,
said they have entered
we join other members in
Iranian
strongly
airspace,
condemning
and everyone took a deep
the
breath,
continued
'cause they had more
arbitrary
missiles
detention of
pointing at
UN
them, but the
personnel,
equipment is so good, it's
humanitarian
stealth,
workers,
way up in the air,
and
and it
diplomatic
was
staff
stealth, and
by
they
the
went right
Houthi
through that.
authorities.
And they
These
sort of, by the time
detentions,
they found out they were there, they were already
some
gone. That was the
ongoing
word
since
skedaddle, get the hell out of
2021,
here.
constitute
But they
a
were
clear
right
violation
in the
of
most
international
dangerous
law
airspace in the world,
and
they
represent
took
a
those
serious
big, beautiful, very
impediment to the
fast.
delivery of
They were
humanitarian
unbelievable planes.
assistance
I mean, they
in the
become
country. We
really
reiterate our
beautiful
call for
works
the
of art.
immediate
You know, I always thought
and
they sort of were
unconditional
cool, but
release of
now
all
they look
detained
better than
UN,
just cool,
diplomatic,
don't they, huh?
and humanitarian
But they
personnel,
dropped the loads
and
and
for full,
literally
safe, and
they would hit.
unhindered humanitarian access
If you look at
throughout
this
Yemen.
table from here to
Let me
there, they had
conclude by
a half a
emphasizing that
refrigerator
only
door is
a
the way you took
comprehensive
best explain
approach,
it. Take a refrigerator
anchored
door,
in
average
inclusive
size, cut it in
political
half.
dialogue
That
and
was their
urgent
target. They
humanitarian
hit every
action,
single one.
can
Then we
pave the
had
way for
30
lasting peace
missiles,
and
Tomahawk,
stability
shot
in
from
Yemen.
submarines 300
The
miles
Council
away.
must send
Every
a
one of them hit
unified
their
and
target. It was a
unequivocal
perfect
message.
mission. Then they
The
came
people
back
of Yemen deserve
almost
peace,
37
dignity,
hours.
and a
Every
future
plane worked
free from
perfectly.
fear,
The mechanics were
hunger,
here too.
and
I said,
despair.
You got to get the mechanics here.
Pakistan
We didn't
remains
have any
steadfast
problems.
in its support for
If you
peace,
remember, they had a lot of problems
stability,
with the helicopters,
sovereignty,
but they did
unity,
fly
and
through a dust
territorial
storm, which they
integrity
shouldn't
of
have done.
Yemen.
sometimes you say,
And
let's go back
in the
and try it
pursuit
on a
of those
nicer day.
objectives,
Dust
we should
and sand
support
don't
all
work well with
efforts
helicopters if
aimed
you
at
know much
achieving a
about
just,
helicopters. But that was a
inclusive and
horrible
durable
embarrassment
resolution of
to
this
us that we had
conflict.
Afghanistan, which I think was the
I'll
most
now
embarrassing
resume my
moment in the history of our
function as the
country. And we would have
President
gotten
of
out.
the Council,
I was the one that
and
got him down. I would have
would
kept
now like to give
Bagram,
the floor
the big air base,
to
which right
the
now is controlled by
distinguished
China,
representative
one
of
among
Yemen.
the most powerful runways in the world, thick
اسمحوا لي
with
في
concrete
البداية
and steel. Anything could land, and right now,
سعادة
they were
السفير
1 hour away
عاصم،
from where China makes its
أنا
nuclear
أهنئكم
weapons. I was keeping it. Outside of that, we were
وأهني
leaving, and I would
باكستان
have
على
been out
رئاسة
faster than them,
مجلس
but we
الأمن
would have
لهذا
gotten out
الشهر.
with strength and dignity. Instead, that was the most botched up
لكم
mess I've ever seen. They left all that equipment behind, and every year they have a parade
أشكر سلفكم
running down some
المندوب الدائم
third-rate street
لغيان
with the
الصديقة على
equipment.
رئاسة
Supposed to be
الموفقة في
Fifth
الشهر
Avenue, it
الماضي.
doesn't work.
أتوجه
But
بالشكر
with all that
للسيد
equipment that
هانس
they left, they
كرانبرغ
should have taken
والسيد
every ounce of it.
توم
I
فليتشر
was
على
taking
إحاطة
every, I
هيمة
said every screw, every bolt,
وأشكر
every
الأخت
nail
العزيزة
you take out of there.
سمر ناصر
And,
على إحاطته.
Millie said, I remember one time,
السيد
so
الرئيس
I'm leaving the
يواجه شعبنا اليمني الصابر مع دخول هذا الصراع عامه الحادي عشر تحديات اقتصادية هائلة وأزمة إنسانية من الصعب قياسها استمرت طويلا بسبب الحرب التي شنتها الميليشيات الحوثية الإرهابية المدعومة من النظام الإيراني على الرغم من كل الجهود التي يبذلها مجلس القيادة الرئاسي والحكومة اليمنية للدفع بمسار السلام العادل والشامل والمستدام والتعاطي الإيجابي مع الجهود والمساعي الإقليمية والدولية وجهود الأمم المتحدة على المبعوث الخاص باليمن لإنهاء هذا الصراع إلا أن الميليشيات الحوثية مستمرة في تعنتها وإصرارها على إطالة أمد هذا الصراع ومفاقمة الأزمة الإنسانية لليمنيين واستمرارها في التصعيد العسكري وتواصل مخططاتها في العودة إلى مربع العنف ودوامة الحرب وإغراق اليمن في أزمة إنسانية غير مسبوقة. كما نحذر من تدخلات النظام الإيراني في الشام وتهريب الأسلحة والخبراء العسكريين للميليشيات الحوثية في انتهاك صارخ بقرارات مجلس الأمن ذات الصلة في المقدمة القرار 22. أن تحقيق السلام والاستقرار في اليمن يقتضي إظهار الالتزام والرغبة الجدية من قبل الميليشيات الحوثية والاضطراب بإيجابية حسنية مع الجهود الإقليمية والدولية وجهود الأمم المتحدة الهادفة إلى إنهاء الأزمة اليمنية وتخليها عن خيار الحرب والتصعيد وتقليل مصالح الشعب اليمني على مصالحها ومصالح داعمه والتخلي عن نهجها المزعزع للأمن والاستقرار في اليمن. وتحذر الحكومة اليمنية من مواجهة استمرار الميليشيات الحوثية زج اليمن وشعبه في الصراعات الإقليمية المدمرة وتحمل هذه الميليشيات وداعميها كامل المسؤولية عن العواقب الوخيمة والمترتبة على أي أعمال متحورة من شأنها إغراق اليمن ومزيدا من الأزمات بما في ذلك عسكرة الممرات النهائية الدولية وتهديد الأمن الغذائي وما تبقى من فرص العيش لليمنيين ومفاقمة الأزمة الإنسانية حيث قادت مغامرات هذه الميليشيات للإضرار بمصالح الشعب اليمني وتدمير مقدراته ومكتسباته ولا تزال مستمرة في مغامراتها الطائشة نحو مزيد من أن الميليشيات الحوثية التي تدعي السعي للسلام تمارس يوميا الانتهاكات الجسيمة ضد الشعب اليمني في مناطق سيطرتها في انتهاك صارخ للقانون الدولي الإنساني والقانون الدولي لحقوق الإنسان بما في ذلك اختطاف موظفي وكالات الأمم المتحدة والمنظمات الدولية العاملة في اليمن ومنظمات المجتمع المدني والبعثات الدبلوماسية واقتحام ونهب مقراتها وممتلكاتها وسرقة المساعدات الإنسانية وافتعال الأزمات لخدمة أجندتها التخريبية وتستخدم معاناة اليمنيين إداة للابتزاز السياسي وقد تحولت المناطق الخاضعة لسيطرة الميليشيات الحوثية إلى ساحات للقمع والإرهاب وممارسة أبشع الانتهاكات حق أبناء الشعب
that maybe don't like us or want to play games with us, because I think that had we not had the situation in Afghanistan, I don't think Putin would have gone in. I think when Putin looked at how stupid and incompetent that operation was, he said, wow, this might be a chance. And he's dealing with him now too. We're not happy with Putin. I'm not happy with Putin. I can tell you that much right now. Because he's killing a lot of people. And a lot of them are his soldiers. His soldiers and their soldiers, mostly. And it's now up to 7,000 a week. And I'm not happy with Putin. Okay. Any questions? Yes.
وممتلكاته ومصادر أرزاقه في انتهاك صارخ لكافة المناطق الدولية والشرائع الإنسانية. آخر هذه الجرائم الجريمة البشعة التي ارتكبتها الميليشيات الحوثية في المديرية السلفية بمحافظة ريبة حيث قامت بقتل الشيخ صالح الدوش وحفيده وإصابة زوجته بعد فرض الحصار على منزله وشن هجوما مسلح استهدف تدمير المنزل وإحراق المنازل المجاورة في مشهد يعكس وحشية هذه الميليشيات وفي محاولة لكسر إرادة المجتمع اليمني وفرض مشروعها المدمر والمستورد بقوة السلاح والإرهاب. تأتي هذه الجرائم امتدادا لنمط متكرر من إجرام هذه الميليشيات بحق اليمنيين وتكشف الجلاء عن عقلية انتقامية حاقدة لا تقيم وزنا للإنسان اليمني ولا للأرض، بل تمضي في مشروعها التدميري لاستهداف كل مظاهر الحياة والاستقرار والعيش الكريم وإرهاب السكان والدفع بهم إلى النزوح. نؤكد أن هذه الجرائم بحق الشعب اليمني بحق الشعب اليمني الرافض لمشروعها القمعي والعنصري لن تمر دون محاسبة وندعو هنا المنظمات الدولية المنظمات الحقوقية والإنسانية إلى توثيق هذه الجرائم والانتهاكات وما يسهم في حماية الضحايا وإنصافهم ويحول دون استمرار هذا الإرهاب المنظم. سيد الرئيس، أن جريمة القرصنة البحرية التي ارتكبتها الميليشيات الحوثية مؤخرا عبر استهداف سفينة الشحن التجارية مجد قبال سواحل مدينة الحديدة البحر الأحمر تعكس مجددا خطورة استمرار سيطرة الميليشيات الحوثية على أجزاء من الشريط الساحلي اليمني وما يشكله ذلك من تهديد مباشر ومستدام لأمن وسلامة الملاحة البحرية والتجارة العالمية وخطوط إمداد الطاقة التي تمر عبر البحر الأحمر وباب المندب وخليج عدن واستخدام اليمن منصة لزعزعة السلام وفي هذا السياق
over $300 billion. Europe's in there for over $100 billion. But still, Europe's a lot.
الأمن البحري
And
والاستقرار
I
الإقليمي
will say
والدولي
this, the
لا
Ukrainians,
يمكن
whether
تحقيقه
you
إلا
think it's
عبر
unfair that we gave
استعادة
all that
الدولة
money or
اليمنية
not, they were very
وممارسة
brave because
الحكومة
somebody had to
اليمنية
operate that.
سلطاتها على كامل
A
شبه
lot of people I
الساحل
know wouldn't be
وعلى
operating
كامل
if they
الأراضي
were
اليمنية
Kurds to do it. So
وإنهاء
they fought
انقلاب
very
هذه
bravely,
الميليشيات
but we gave
المنظمة
them
والنظام الإيراني
the
الذي
best
يسعى
equipment in
لتأهيل
the world.
اليمن
We make the
إلى
best
منصة
military equipment by
متقدمة
far. There's nobody
لتهديد
close. You
المصالح
look at other
الإقليمية
equipment from
والدولية
other countries, it's not even close. That's why everybody wants to
إنقاذ
buy
الناقل
our equipment. And
المحملة
that's why we're
حوالي
going to step up these
17
contractors now that make it, and they're brilliant, but they make it too slowly.
شديد
And
الخطورة
we have to step them up
حدوث
and
كارثة
let them
بيئية
make
واسعة
it at a
الضرر على البيئة
much
البحرية في
higher
المياه
rate.
الإقليمية اليمنية
Unfortunately, we have to
والبحر
do
الأحمر
that.
وكارثة
But if you look at our
اقتصادية
Patriots, if
وإنسانية
you look at our
لمئات الآلاف
Tomahawks,
من اليمنيين الذين يعتمدون في معيشتهم
what
على
we do with
خيرات
tanks,
البيئة البحرية
you wouldn't want to be driving a tank.
غرقها
You would
سيشكل
feel nice
خطرا
and
على
secure.
السفن التي
But they are
عبر
javelins, they're
مسارات
called.
الشحن الحيوية في
And
البحر
I gave
الأحمر
them
وباب
the
المندب.
javelins. Remember they
تدعو
said
الحكومة اليمنية
Trump gave
الدول
the
والمنظمات
javelins
والهيئات
and
الدولية
Obama gave
المعنية
the
بالحفاظ على البيئة البحرية
Right?
إلى
Called
سرعة
Obama
التعامل مع
at
أزمات
that time.
مع أزمة
Barack Hussein
الناقلة
Obama
الماجيك
gave it.
وتفادي
It's a
كارثة
terrible
بيئية
job.
خطيرة
But that was
كما
a war
تؤكد على
that
أهمية
was a war
وجود
that
آليات
shouldn't
دولية
happen. And a lot of
فاعلة
people have died.
للتعامل بشكل عاجل مع مثل هذه الحوادث
We
والكوارث
get a lot of
لا سيما
bullshit
في
thrown
ظل
at us by
استمرار
Putin.
هجمات الميليشيات الحوثية المباشرة على نقلات المواد النفطية والكيميائية في ممرات الملاحة الدولية. السيد الرئيس ألفت انتباه هذا المجلس الموضوع ألفت انتباه الأمم المتحدة إلى تطور خطير حيث قدمت الميليشيات الحوثية الإرهابية على السيطرة على الناقلة هوتيكا التي أشترتها الأمم المتحدة في إطار تنفيذ خطتها لإنقاذ الناقلة المتهالكة الراسية قبالة ساحل الحديدة لتفادي حدوث كارثة بيئية واقتصادية وإنسانية
have actually decreased in price
سبق
from
وحذرنا
December
في هذا
through March. Well, my question is, the Fed chairman, will the
استيلاء
Fed
هذه
chairman,
الميليشيات على السفينة النوتية البديلة للناقل
are the prices
الاقتصادي.
just not
Chairman of the
طالب
Fed.
المجتمع الدولي والأمم
You do a
المتحدة
better job.
متابعة خطوات وتنفيذ مراحل خطة الإنقاذ لضمان عدم استخدام هذه الميليشيات الناقلة البديلة لخدمة مصالحها. استيلاء الميليشيات الحوثية على الناقلة النوتية وتحويلها إلى خزانا عائما لتهريب وتقديم النفط الإيراني يمثل انتهاكا صارخا وخرقا فاضحا بالاتفاقات والالتزامات المضربة مع الأمم المتحدة بشأن الناقلات وتفويضا لجهود هذا المجلس الموقر والأمم المتحدة ويمثل سابقة خطيرة تهدد أمن وسلامة أصول وعمليات الأمم المتحدة ومنظمات الدولة. هذه الميليشيات باستخدام الناقلتين نوتيكا وصافر رغم التهالك والخطر الغرقي أو الانفجار اللتان لا تزالا تحت سيطرة هذه الميليشيات لتخزين شحنات النفط الواردة والموانئ التي تسيطر عليها. يدعو هذا المجلس الموقر يتحمل مسؤوليات مسؤولياته وإجراء التحقيق العاجل واستعادة دور الأمم المتحدة الكامل في الإشراف على السفينة وعدم السماح للميليشيات الحوثية باستخدامها لخدمة مصالحها والالتفاف على قرار تصنيفها والعقوبات المفروضة عليها محاسبة المرتكبين. سيد الرئيس، إن الوضع الاقتصادي والخدمي سيبقى التحدي الأهم لمجلس القيادة الرئاسي والحكومة اليمنية وفي صدارة أولوياتهم القصوى. وفي هذا السياق تواصل الحكومة اليمنية جهودها في تنفيذ مسار الإصلاحات الاقتصادية والمالية والإدارية والوفاء بالتزاماتها الحتمية والعمل على تحسين الأوضاع الاقتصادية والخدمية ومقدمتها الكهربائية والطاقة وانتظام دفع مرتبات الموظفين واستدامة الخدمات الأساسية وتحسين صرف العملة الوطني ومكافحة الفساد وتعزيز الإيرادات وتنويعها وضبط وترشيد النفقات بما يؤدي إلى تحقيق الاستقرار واتخاذ عددا من الإجراءات لتجاوز التحديات الراهنة التي أثرت بشكل مباشر على قدرة الحكومة لتوفير الخدمات الأساسية للمواطنين والتخفيف من معاناتهم اليومية في ظل الظروف الراهنة والصعبة وفي ضوء استمرار توقف الصادرات النفطية وانعكاساته الكارثية على الأوضاع العيشية. وتناشد الحكومة اليمنية الدول الشقيقة والصديقة والمنظمات الدولية المانحة إلى دعم جهودها مكسا من تقديم الخدمات الأساسية والوفاء بالتزاماتها الحتمية وتعزيز الاستقرار الاقتصادي والاستجابة لأولويات المرحلة الراهنة. كون هذا الدعم يصب في جهود المجتمع الدولي والإقليمي لتحقيق السلام واستعادة الأمن والاستقرار في اليمن والاستثمار في الأمن والسلم الإقليمي والدولي. وفي هذا الإطار نثمن عاليا المواقف الأخوية للأشقاء في المملكة العربية السعودية ودولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة إلى جانب الشعب اليمني والتي مثلت مصالحهما الاقتصادية والتنموية والإنسانية عاملا مهما في استمرار وقت الدولة في التزاماتها الحتمية خلال السنوات الماضية. وبالختام السيد الرئيس تؤكد مجلس القيادة الرئاسي على الحرص والالتزام ودعم كافة الجهود والمساعي الإقليمية والدولية.
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Tehran. It just seems like a desecration. But you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively. The video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Mr. President, on the tariffs again, on August 1st, you've said is the deadline. What incentives do countries have to negotiate? It seems that deadline keeps moving. It was April 2nd, now it's...
We didn't move, no. It's always been August 1st, that's when we're paying. And a statement was put out today, and I put it out just to make it clear. It wasn't a change, it was August 1st. We don't change very much. Every time we put out a statement, they say he made a change. I didn't make a change. Clarification, maybe. No, August 1st they pay. And everybody pays, everybody has to pay, and the incentive is that they have the right to deal in the United States. If they don't want to, they don't have to pay, and they don't have to deal here. But if they want to buy and make a lot of money and sell in the United States, they have to do that. If you go back and look at some of the good presidents, our country was the wealthiest, proportionately the wealthiest, from 1870 to 1913. It was an all-tariff country. We didn't have income tax. That came in in 1913. We had tariffs. And we had so much money we didn't know what to do with it. We had a couple of presidents that were very, very strong. McKinley, I guess more than anybody, but he was the tariff king, but he was very, very strong. It's sort of sad. He made a fortune for this country, became very rich, and then Teddy Roosevelt went out and vice president, and he spent the money. And they said Roosevelt was a great president. And let's say he was a great president, but the money was paid by McKinley with tariffs. Tariffs are charged by other countries at levels that are ridiculous. And I call those other countries, and every one of them is willing to give us everything now, by the way, just so you know. Sir, we'll charge you no tariffs, nothing. We'll give you everything. We'll give you access to our markets. We'll give you everything. Is that a correct statement, Scott?
Yes, sir.
Howard, would you say that's a correct statement?
Exactly correct.
It's like they just don't, because they're very spoiled, because for years they ripped us off and we didn't have a president that understood it, or Secretary of Treasury or Secretary of a lot of different secretaries are involved, but certainly Commerce Secretary was, not doing their job. I don't know about Kelly, she's small business. We'll keep it that way, okay? Her small business is bigger than almost all big businesses when you add it all up. But no, they are very respectful of our country. But the incentive is that they have the right to do business with us. Without that, they don't have the right to do business. And that would be okay, too.
Will there be a flurry of deals? Will we hear in the next 24 hours, will we hear a flurry of deals?
Yeah, we have a lot of them going out. But the deals are mostly my deal to them. We're picking a number that's low. We don't want to hurt them. And fair. We're picking a number that's lower than, in most cases, lower than what they charged us. But it's amazing when you've paid all this money for years and they get one president that's a little bit different and a little tougher on this subject, and they're willing to drop everything they've been charging us for years and years. I mean, we have countries going, you don't have to pay any tariff to come in and do business. They're giving us total access to their countries. They gave us no access to the country. They'd say, well, you cannot go into our country. Okay, good. Now we will give you total access and you don't have to pay any tariffs. But please don't charge us tariffs. And we don't like that deal. So the letters I send out we have made some deals. We can make a lot more deals. It's just too time consuming. It just makes it more complicated. And we can do things over the years too. We're not hard line. But it's about time the United States of America started collecting money from countries that were ripping us off and laughing behind our back at how stupid we were. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. President, on the tariff issue, so you've talked about India coming, but then a couple days ago you issued a new tariff threat to members of the BRICS countries for if they aligned with anti-American policies.
10% charge.
That would be India, Brazil,
That's
Russia,
right, they have to pay 10% if they're in BRICS. Because BRICS was set up to hurt us. BRICS was set up to degenerate our dollar and take our dollar as the standard, take it off as the standard. And that's okay if they want to play that game, but I can play that game too. So anybody that's in BRICS is getting a 10% charge.
Is that immediate, sir? Or is
Yeah,
that
pretty soon.
if they engage in some behavior?
Well, if they're a member of BRICS, they're going to have to pay 10% tariff just for that one thing. And they won't be a member long. I thought BRICS was, I said this about a year ago, and it largely broke up. But, there are a couple that hang around, but I thought it largely broke up. BRICS is not, in my opinion, not a serious threat. But what they're trying to do is destroy the dollar so that another country can take over and be the standard. And we're not going to lose the standard at any time. If you have a smart president, you will never lose the standard. If you have a stupid president like the last one, you would lose the standard. You wouldn't have the dollar as you. And if we lost the world standard dollar, that would be like losing a war, a major world war. We would not be the same country any longer. We're not going to let that happen. The dollar, you ever hear the expression, dollar is king? The dollar is king. We're going to keep it that way, okay? And I'm just saying, if people want to challenge it, they can, but they're going to have to pay a big price. And I don't think any of them are willing to pay that price.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are you optimistic about reaching a tariff deal with the European Union soon?
Well, the European Union has been speaking to us, Ursula and the whole group, and they've been very nice. They treated us very badly until recently. Now they're treating us very nicely. It's like a different world, actually. They've treated us very badly. They were among the toughest to deal with. Actually, in many respects, they were much worse than China. Look at what they do to our companies. They sue Apple, they sue Google. 17 billion they got from Apple on a lawsuit that they didn't have a case. They have, judges that are European Union judges. And they take so much money away from our country in terms of that, in terms of other things that they do. They're very tough. But now they're being very nice to us. And we'll see what happens. We're probably 2 days off from sending them a letter. We are talking to them. I just want you to know, a letter means a deal. A lot of people say, we got 200 countries. We can't meet with 200 countries. We have a few trusted people that know what they're doing, that are doing a good job, but you can't do it. You have to do it in a more general way, but it's a very good way. It's a better way. It's a more powerful way. And we sent them a letter. You read the letter. I think it was well crafted. And mostly it's just a little number in there. You'll pay 25%, 35%. We have some at 60, 70. Those are ones with massive, where we have massive trade deficits because they've treated us very badly. But I would say in every case, I'm treating them better than they treated us over the years. Don't you agree with that? I could have done much. I could have been much harsher. I don't want to do that. We want to have relationships, but in every case, they treated us far worse than I'm treating them. I'm treating them very good. I could go higher with the tariffs, but I don't want to hurt them. That's why when you just read it, you come up with the number. It's so incredible that prices are actually going down. Just so you know, when I got in, everyone said, eggs are going through the roof. I was in for about 4 days, and they started screaming at me about eggs. They said, that's Biden's problem. I didn't know about eggs. But eggs up about 5 times. You did a fantastic job. And we ended up shortly getting, in fact, for Easter, they said, go out and buy plastic eggs. You can't use real eggs. Well, we bought 200,000 eggs for the White House for the Easter egg hunt that we have at the White House, and there were eggs. We had the price down, and now the price is lower than it was before. We did a good job with eggs, but we did a good job with groceries. Our prices are down in this country. A big part of it's oil. The oil, you had a couple of places last week, you had $1.99 for oil, for gasoline. Nobody thought they'd see that. I want to get it lower if I can. but we've done a good job. You've done a very good job. Do you want to say a couple of words about that, you and Chris, about what's happening with energy?
Well, absolutely, but I would say on the pricing side, President Trump, the fact that you've endorsed and supported a policy of energy dominance, that sends a signal to the market that we're going to have more supply. You talked during the campaign about inflation being a country buster. You've broken in the back of inflation in 6 months, among all the other things you've accomplished.
We have no inflation.
And we've got, and then heading into the 4th of July, these were the lowest gas prices at the pump in 4 years. And again, for Americans, this is like hundreds of billions of dollars that stay in their pockets because we lower the price of gas at the pump. But when we lower the price of energy, it lowers the price of food. It lowers the price of the clothes you wear.
It's the biggest thing.
It's the biggest thing.
It's like a big tax cut. When you get energy down, every 50 cents is like a massive tax cut, and we've gotten it down much below that. You know, we had great energy, great low prices, everything else. When the election turned over, I'm trying to be nice about it. It turned over, shockingly, but nevertheless it happened. Energy started going up, and it went up really bad, and then he went back to the Trump policy. The problem was they didn't know how to do that, and he lost it. He lost that sucker. That big sucker was out of control, and his energy prices went way up, and that's what caused it. But it was also stupid spending. They spent money like, they used to use the term drunken sailors, but I won't use that term. Although it is very descriptive, I won't use that term. I refuse to use it. But they spent money at levels that nobody had ever seen before, and trillions and trillions of dollars wasted on the Green New Scam, greatest scam in the history of our country, other than maybe Russia, that might have been. But the Green New Scam was the single greatest scam in the history of our country, and continues to be, but it's weakened badly. It's hobbling along because people are they're finally getting it. But they spent trillions of dollars on the Green New Scam, getting nothing for it. Devised by a couple of young people that weren't even good college students, you know? Not even good students. Check out their marks. Yeah? No, not for CNN. Not for CNN. Go ahead.
In the last jobs report, Mr. President, in the last jobs report, the manufacturing jobs actually lost 7,000 jobs. When will the investments that you've been talking about have an effect on manufacturing?
We're building the plants now. About 7 have started. We're going to have hundreds started within a short period of time. Lee Zeldin, who may be the most important man in this room, I'm sorry, but he's the one that gets the permits, whereas he's the one that has to get the permits for the plants and the factories, and permits that used to take 5 years, he's getting in record-setting times. AI, we're leading China a lot in AI, and if we go with this, you know, I'm allowing the plants to build their own electric. I'm allowing them to become an electric utility, so they can produce their own electricity, because we need double to be successful with AI, which is the biggest thing now. We need double the electricity that we have, which is hard to believe. We need even more than that. And they're building plants with their own electricity substations. They don't have to use the grid. And anything they build extra, they're putting into the grid. So we're supplying the grid with brand new electric sources. And you know, it's funny, when they came to see me, they never even asked for that. I told them about it. The reason they didn't, they thought that was an impossibility. You're not allowed to build your own electric. These are massive investments that are being made in building electricity for their plants. And they're going to have, I think, Doug, a lot of electricity left over. And that electricity is going to be passed into the grid and give us no more, you know, like you look at California. They have blackouts and brownouts every week. They're totally out of control. They have a really incompetent governor. Where's Chris? Is he here? Do you want to speak to the subject?
Yeah, I think a huge thing in the One Big Beautiful Bill, Mr. President, because of your leadership, is the ending of these subsidies, as you call them, the Green New Scam. That saves our country $500 billion over the next 10 years. But American taxpayers were paying twice. They were paying that money, $500 billion in the subsidies, and they were paying more expensive electricity price. If you subsidize something, you should at least lower the cost of it. But in this case, we were subsidizing something and paying more for it. So the One Big Beautiful Bill had two huge things: ending wasteful spending. Wind, solar, and batteries combined are 3% of U.S. total primary energy. 3% for $1 trillion, another $500 billion coming. That's just not a good investment, hurting our businesses, hurting our consumers. And the one big beautiful bill also unshackled oil, gas, and coal development in the United States, onshore and offshore. Secretary Burgum has been working tirelessly on how, by getting the government out of the way, private businesses will develop more resources in the United States, lowering costs for American consumers and making much better leverage for the United States to help our allies abroad and reduce the power of our adversaries abroad. So just a huge win on the energy front all around, and I thank you for your leadership.
We're setting records now on energy, and there'll be nothing compared to what they'll be in about a year from now, but we're setting records. And wind is a very expensive form of energy. It's very bad for your beautiful surroundings, the plains and the valleys, and the birds are dying all over the place. You know, the whole thing is a disaster. They're almost exclusively made in China. Not that I have anything against China, because I don't have a great relationship with President, but they don't have a lot of wind farms, I'll tell you, very, very few. And wind is tremendously expensive and is very ugly. And if you own a house that's inside of a windmill, your house is worth less than half. And you hear noises. And interestingly, in New England, you probably read, where for 50 years they had 2 wells washed up. 50 years. And last summer, they had 14 washed up. Now, I'm not saying that's the wind farm that was built, but maybe it is, right? Probably is. It's tremendously expensive, and it can only be done with subsidy. You know, I know a man that's in that business, and one of the biggest in the world actually runs a company that builds these stupid windmills. And he said, I hate the business because it's the only energy where you need subsidy. He said, energy shouldn't need subsidy. You should make money with energy. So wind. The other one is the solar, those big solar fields. They're taking our farmland. Our farmers are like mortified by it. They hate it. It's very, very inefficient and very ugly too. You know, probably better than a windmill, but you go around and you see all these things that are 3 miles long by 3 miles wide, and you say, what the hell is that? And it's a lot of plastic from China. It's plastic, black plastic from China. Now, we want to be smart. We're going with, look, China right now is building 58 coal-fired plants, 58 big ones. They have 62 on the books to build. We've reintroduced clean, beautiful coal, because you know you can do a lot with coal now. Clean, beautiful coal, and natural gas, and all of the other things that we have. But we don't want wind, and we don't want solar, because they're a blight on our country. They hurt our country very badly, and smart countries don't use it. Solar sounds good, I will say, and I like, on occasion, you'll see a roof which is made of solar brick, but it's a smaller use. We need the kind of thing that's going to fire up our plants, and it's not going to be wind, you know, that is very intermittent, as you probably know. But they've spent a fortune. They've spent trillions of dollars on this stuff. And I'll just give you one other story. A friend of mine is a very successful guy. He went back to see his mother in Minnesota. Hadn't seen her in a long time. And he wasn't back for 10 years, which isn't a nice story. I mean, you don't see your mother for 10 years. She's got some difficulties, which I know the guy, he does have some difficulties. He's very successful, but probably not the nicest person. It was actually longer than 10 years, but he went back and he told me he wanted to go and look at the valley. There's a valley in Minnesota that he thought was so beautiful. And I hadn't seen it in a long time. And he's driving along the road. He said, oh my, I'll use the word gosh, oh my gosh. He said, oh. He said, it looked like a junkyard. You had 159 windmills. They were all over the place. Some were old, some were newer, different companies, different shapes, different sizes, different colors. Many of them were terminated. Terminated meaning closed. You can't take them down because the environmentalists don't let you bury the blades because they're made out of a fiber they say is bad for the earth. So they want you to put them up, but they don't let you take them down. But many of them were turned off. He said it looked like a junkyard. Go to Palm Springs, California, and take a look at that pile of junk. And you go into a wealthy neighborhood. Before you get there, you have to ride through hundreds of windmills that are, most of them are turned off. They're rotting, they're rusting, they're 30 years old, 20 years old. And they have a very short life. You know, those windmills have a very short life, especially the ones that are in the nice salty Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean, where the salt just gets under that steel and decimates it. No, it's a horrible, horrible thing for our country. And I speak out. It would be nice to say wind, because it sounds so good, doesn't it, Doug? Wind, wind. But it's not. It's these ugly machines, and they're all made. You got to see. Some are a little taller, a little shorter. They're made by different companies. They have different stocks. They have different blades. They have different everything. It is so horrible. And if you look at smart countries, they don't use it. Smart countries don't use it. And we're now a smart country. We're not we're a brilliant country. We're not smart. We're brilliant now. We're going to be a brilliant country. We have to be, because we have to catch up for some really stupid people that did a bad job. Yes, Brian?
Yes, Mr. President, I've got a quick comment, some feedback as a native Texan, someone that I grew up bringing my kids to a camp very near the affected camp now. Thank you on behalf of Texas. I've gotten hundreds of messages that want to thank. If you're in the cabinet room, you can tell the president and his team on behalf of Texans, thank you so much for the quick response and the loving, the hugs. I saw that you gave. Two quick questions.
I saw a Palestinian senator. His name is Schumer. He's a great Palestinian. No, he's a Palestinian. He's become a Palestinian. He's abandoned the Jews. But I saw him say, it's Trump's fault. Yeah, that's right. It's Trump's fault. He was actually, do you ever see John Lovett's The Liar? Where he goes, yeah, I went to Harvard. That's right. This was Schumer. He goes, yeah, it's Trump's fault. That's right, it's Trump. I actually saw that stupid guy try and blame it on me, and I said, man, that's a tough one to take. But his career is limited, because I hear AOC is going to beat him, and she's no bargain either, by the way. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying that's an example of an America First team effort to get this country back. So that's what America First looks like for the viewers watching us at home. My two questions. Looks like we have a rogue judge, an Obama.
Biden allowed to happen in Afghanistan. And what that did to our image, President Trump said, with Operation Midnight Hammer, we're reestablishing American leadership and deterrence, and we're proud to be a part of it, sir.
And our so-called enemies were watching. They watched every minute of it. They watched. There was very few people that weren't watching, actually. But they watched every minute. It was a perfect military performance, the likes of which we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, if you compare that to the same country, the hostages from years ago, Jimmy Carter, it was unfortunate for Jimmy Carter. He was a nice man, but with the helicopters going down, the sandstorms, the prisoners, they got captured, then the election and the prisoners and Reagan and all the problems. It was nothing but problems. And that was a failure. And ours was not only the pilots. I mean, those machines flew for 37 straight hours. They didn't stop. They went skedaddle. You know the word skedaddle? It means skedaddle. They dropped the bombs, and somebody said, skedaddle. Let's get the hell out of here. And every bomb hit its mark, and hit it incredibly. And as you know, the Atomic Energy Commission said it's gone. That place is gone. We had a lot of fake reporting, mostly from CNN, where the scammer writer for CNN, who should be fired, by the way. She was involved with the 51 fake intelligence agents, if you remember that. She did that story, created a story out of it. She created a story out of the laptop from hell, saying it came from Russia, but it actually came from Hunter Biden's bedroom, or worse. Just a scammer, and she's still at CNN, which is pretty amazing. But we'll ask you a question about her. But they came up with this concept that maybe the attack wasn't that good. Maybe and I saw it happen right after the attack. I saw this person on CNN. I actually watch. I like to watch the enemy. You learn from the enemy. And I watch, because you have to know where they're coming from. And I watched her say, Anderson, I'm hearing stories that maybe they didn't hit their target. Maybe it wasn't that good a hit. And they were hearing stories. The next day it was a little more, and the next day a little more. After 3-4 days, she was saying, I don't know. I don't think it was that. Except by that time, everybody knew it was hit perfectly. The evidence is in the planes. The pilots are the best evidence. But they actually came out of their plane, because they were here the other day, and they said, It was so sad. We did such a good job. We flew into very dangerous airspace. I'll never forget, we were in the Situation Room, and they said they have entered Iranian airspace, and everyone took a deep breath because they had more missiles pointed at them, but the equipment is so good, it's stealth, way up in the air, and it was stealth, and they went right through that, and they sort of, by the time they found out they were there, they were already gone. That was the word skedaddle, get the hell out of here. But they were right in the most dangerous airspace in the world, and they took those big, beautiful, very fast, they're unbelievable planes. I mean, they become really beautiful works of art. I always thought they sort of were cool, but now they look better than just cool, don't they, huh? But they dropped